Sidney Powell is creating a nightmare scenario for the GOP in Georgia. The election in Georgia is coming up, and it's not just a regular election; it is a runoff election. And for those of you who might not know what a runoff election is, and you're thinking, what is a runoff election? Basically, a runoff election is an election where two candidates in the general election, so the presidential election that happened a couple weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago now, on December 3rd, a month ago, basically, in a sense, the candidates in a certain congressional race did not receive a majority of votes. And that means that nobody hit 50%. That means that the Republican and the Democrat in the two Senate races in Georgia, with Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue being the incumbents, and Warnock and John Ossoff being the, I don't remember Warnock's name, but being the challengers to the incumbents. So basically, they are running. They didn't hit either. Neither of them hit a majority, so they have to go to the runoff elections. And that happens in early January. Well, as I've said before on this show, Sidney Powell came out weeks ago saying, "Oh my God, there's voter fraud," and the evidence she was putting out was bullcrap. And the Trump campaign even knew that, so Trump himself had to let her go because they knew, like, oh crap, she's not helping us at all. Well, she held a rally with Lynn Wood, and sort of is. They're sort of creating a GOP nightmare, a nightmare for the GOP in Georgia. Because here's what's happening. They held a rally with hundreds of people, and they're basically telling people not to vote. That is the worst thing you can do in an election if you're the GOP. And even if you're the Democratic Party, if you've got people telling you don't vote in a runoff election, that's terrible. Now, we say that as Democrats as well, but let me get to this video, and I will link to Sagar Enjeti and Ryan Grimm's conversation from Rising. The Hill's Rising. The Hill is a YouTube channel, and it's a media publication that publishes stories as well. And Ryan Grimm is the bureau chief editor for the Washington bureau chief editor for The Intercept, which is a publication co-founded by Glenn Greenwald. So anyway, I will link to this so that you can see the actual video. I know I do screen recordings, and you're like, where do you get these? So this is the video I'm talking about, where you have Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood making the case for why you shouldn't vote. Watch.
I agree. There should not be a runoff, certainly not on Dominion machines. I think I would encourage all Georgians to make it known that you will not vote at all until your vote is secure. And I mean that regardless of party.
If Kelly Loeffler wants your vote, if David Perdue wants your vote, they've got to earn it. They've got to demand publicly, repeatedly, consistently, Brian Kemp call a special session of the Georgia legislature. And if they do not do it, if Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue do not do it, they have not earned your vote. Don't you give it to them. Why would you go back and vote in another rigged election? For God's sakes, fix it. You gotta fix it before we'll do it again.
All right, so you just saw that. Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood saying, hey, don't go and vote. Because we need to make sure this election is secure. Don't do it. Don't give them your vote unless they tell Brian Kemp to call a special legislature and you tell them to make our election secure. And if they don't do it, You don't give them your vote. You do not do it. Now, there's a few reasons why. I know you're like, why is he doing that accent? It's because I feel like it, and it's Georgia. But here's a couple reasons why they're doing this. Number one, they're doing this. They're saying this to hundreds of Trump voters. And what do the Trump voters think? They falsely believe that, well, this election was stolen. It was rigged. And they've provided zero evidence. And even William Barr, as we said yesterday on the show, said there's no evidence. So, okay. Now, that's the first thing. Why are they saying it? A couple reasons. Number one, again, it's rigged. But number two, they say, oh my God, we're worried about election security. You weren't worried about election security when Moscow Mitch McConnell, the Grim Reaper of the Senate and the Majority Leader, wouldn't bring a vote, wouldn't bring legislation to the floor that would help fix election security. And it would protect against Russia and any foreign interference and any hacking or whatever. You guys didn't complain when Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, wasn't bringing it to the floor. What is it? Do you want election security or not? They're not saying it because they actually care about election security. No, it's different. They're saying it because they need something to tell these Trump voters, this is why you shouldn't vote. Your elections aren't secure. If they really cared about it, they would go for paper ballots or helping to make sure the machines can't get hacked and providing better security. But here's another thing that's going on here. They are basically saying this, and they could affect the vote. Now, let me give you a few caveats. Could they affect the vote enough? I don't know. The absentee ballots, which are ballots you fill out and you send by mail, they're primarily helping Republicans. Republicans have an advantage here. Also, Republican voters are typically the ones that actually go out to the polls more than the Democrats. And the Democrats have actually are struggling to get voters out to the voting polls, to polling locations of the ballot box to vote. Now, if you have John Ossoff, who doesn't support Medicare for all, jobs for all, Green New Deal, housing for all, free college, forgiving student debt, forgiving medical debt, abolishing ICE, getting rid of the filibuster. If he doesn't support any of that, well, guess what? You're really not going to have anybody vote for him. And Warnock, I mean, he supports all of those, so I'm not sure why people aren't voting for him in Georgia, which they should. And if you're watching this video and you know someone in Georgia, tell them to vote for Warnock. If you are from Georgia, please vote for Warnock in the Senate. Now, could this affect the vote? Sure. As Ryan Grimm says, and I'll link to that video as I said before, it could possibly affect 10, 20, or 30,000 votes. Maybe a total of 20 or 30,000. If you can affect that many votes, then the margin is kind of wide. In some ways, a little bit. And you could possibly get the two Democrats elected. David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler are the two Democrats. No. Republicans, I'm sorry, but they're as corrupt as the Democrats. So I said that. Look, when the Democrats are the same as the Republicans, you can't really, find the difference. But again, Kelly Loeffler, what did she do? As she was on the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, she found out how bad coronavirus was going to be, and then she started selling hundreds of millions of dollars, well, at least tens of millions of dollars in her stock portfolio, and said, "Oh no, I didn't know," and then she was under investigation. That's insider trading. You can't do that. That's basically where you know something's going wrong, so then you go and trade stocks and sell stocks, and you tell the American people one thing, and you know that it's actually worse, even though you're telling the American people the other thing. So that's what's happening. So they're corrupt assholes, both of those Republicans, and so is John Ossoff, the Democrat. But if they get 20 to 30,000 people, or 10,000 Republicans, 10, 20, 30,000, to vote against the two Republicans, that's a huge problem for the Republican Party. And I bet you the establishment is shaking in their boots right now, and because they say pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's why I made that reference. Because Newt Gingrich is like, this is bad for America. Don't listen to these people. These are assholes. Please don't listen to them. We care about you. No, they don't. Okay, as I said yesterday on the show, they don't. So anyway, could they do it? Maybe. Is the establishment freaking out in the Republican Party? Yes. Now, there's another thing. Trump voters are asking, okay, why should I go vote now that Sidney Powell and Lin Wood are making these arguments when this election was rigged? Why am I going to go out and vote when this election was rigged? And these people are not giving them a reason to go vote. And neither are David Perdue or Kelly Loeffler. And here's why. Because they don't actually represent what the GOP base, people like me and you, working class people who vote for these monstrous people, deplorables, if you want to call them, if you're Hillary Clinton, deplorable. What did she say? Horrible deplorables or whatever she said. They don't. David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler don't represent what the GOP base wants. And a lot of times they're agreeing with progressive policies. But Donald Trump, even though he's an establishment hack, just like the rest of our presidents, he talks as though he represents the middle class and the working families of this country. The working class voters. And so that's what they're looking for. So they're asking, why am I going to go vote if the election is rigged? And second, why am I going to go vote if you don't represent me? That's what they're asking. And now Sidney Powell is giving them more power to ask that same question. So, again, that's a huge problem. Now, if I were Democratic super PACs, and super PACs are basically, they're pre-authorized contributions, and you have PACs, those are pre-authorized contributions, and those are where you can give, you form a little company or organization, and they can give a limited amount to campaigns. But if you're a super PAC, you're basically a corporation, a major corporation. You can give whatever you want to these candidates, and they can take that money because they're not people. They're not limited. And, you get the Supreme Court, Citizens United, saying that money is free speech, even though it's not. So, anyway, I'll explain that possibly sometime. I always say that and possibly never do, but please comment below if you want me to. Anyway, so if I were the Democratic super PACs, I would be putting up billboards. Now, they are. A lot of super PACs are putting up billboards saying, hey, don't vote. Don't vote. That's genius. That's genius. Because now Republicans are going to see that and it will affect some of the votes. Is it genius enough? I don't know. But hey, you're putting it out there. And if I were you, as Ryan Grimm said, I'd go on Twitter, I'd go on Facebook, I'd go on radio, I'd go on TV, I'd door knock, I'd put flyers, I'd put signs, everything saying, hey, these people said don't vote. Election's rigged. Don't vote. That would be a genius way to win the election if you're a Democratic super PAC. So, again, that's what's going on. Sidney Powell. Now, one last thing. Sidney Powell is a respected Republican lawyer, apparently respected. But when she was on the Trump campaign, putting out terrible analysis and terrible evidence, like I said on the show probably a week ago or two, they let her go because, oh my God, you're so terrible. You're not even giving us valid evidence, even evidence we can use. So they had to let her go. Now, Lin Wood is another respected Republican lawyer. I don't think respected is the right word, but he's a Republican lawyer. And the Republicans have gone to him for decades as their primary fixer, their fixer extraordinaire, like Michael Cohen was for Trump. And what he does is he helps them through crises. And basically when they have a crisis and they need help managing it and getting out of a mess, he cleans it up for them. He fixes it. Now they're probably ruining their careers. The establishment base, the establishment, the GOP establishment, is probably not going to want to work with them because he's probably going to cost them the election. So again, who knows what's going to happen? But that is the nightmare that Sidney Powell and Lin Wood are creating for the GOP. So that's what I think is going on, and let's see how it turns out. I mean, I'm very curious to see, is this going to work? So, let's see what happens. I mean, it's going to be fun. I'm serious. It is.